He should have ridden past her. That was the smart choice, the safe one. Instead, he stopped. She was on her knees in the snow, one glove gone, breath coming in sharp, broken pulls. Fear showed in the way her shoulders shook, in the way she tried to stand and failed. When their eyes met, something tight twisted in his chest. Not pity, recognition, the kind that hurt. He reached for her, and the mountain went silent. Why did saving a stranger feel like crossing a line he could never step back from? Eli Mercer had lived in the Sawtooth Mountains long enough to read storms like scripture. The wind changed its pitch. The snow sharpened. The sky closed its fist. When the whiteout rolled down the ridge that afternoon, he already knew someone would pay for it. He just hadn't expected her. She'd come alone. No horse, no radio. A city woman in a slate blue parka, boots not meant for this kind of cold. Her face was red with exposure, lips pale, eyes wide and stubborn as she tried to shield them from the cutting snow. "Hey," he said, voice low, steady. "Don't move." She laughed once, a thin, broken sound. "That's funny, I can't feel my legs." Eli swung down from his horse in one smooth motion. Snow soaked his jeans as he knelt in front of her. Up close, he could see how bad it was. Frost gathering in her lashes, hands trembling too hard to control. He didn't waste time with questions. He wrapped one arm around her, lifted her like she weighed nothing, and mounted again in one practiced motion. She clutched his coat, fingers digging in like anchors. "Hold on," he said. She did. The ride back was a blur of white and wind. Eli leaned into the storm, guiding his horse by instinct more than sight. The woman pressed into his back, her breath warm through layers of wool and leather. Every so often she muttered something he couldn't hear. A name, maybe. Or a prayer. When the cabin finally came into view, sheltered behind a stone outcrop, relief hit him so hard his hands shook. Inside, the fire was already laid. Eli struck a match and brought the room to life. Orange light filled the small space. He helped her out of her coat, boots, gloves. Her fingers were stiff. Her cheeks burned as feeling returned. "Easy," he murmured, handing her a mug of hot broth. "Small sips." She obeyed. That told him a lot. "I'm Lena," she said after a moment, voice hoarse. "Lena Hart." "Eli." Her eyes lifted to his then, took him in, tall, broad, scar at his temple, beard dusted with melting snow. Something unreadable passed across her face. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "Yes." That was all he offered. Silence settled, broken only by the crack of the fire. Lena's color slowly came back. She flexed her fingers, testing them. When she looked at him again, gratitude softened her features. "I would have died," she said quietly. Eli stared into the flames. The mountain decides those things. She studied him for a long moment. "You don't talk much. Talking doesn't keep you alive." That earned him a small smile. Later, when she slept on the narrow bed near the hearth, Eli sat at the table and watched the snow pile up against the window. He didn't sleep. He rarely did when something felt off, and this did. Morning came clean and bright. Snow glittered like glass under a hard blue sky. Lena woke stiff but steady, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket. Fresh clothes waited folded on a chair, practical, warm. She stepped outside and stopped cold. The valley spread below the cabin, untouched and vast. Pines bowed under snow. Peaks rose sharp and endless. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. "You're on Mercer land," Eli said behind her. She turned. He stood with 2 mugs of coffee, steam curling into the air. "Mercer?" she repeated. "As in the Mercer Wildlife Trust?" "Yes." Her eyes widened. "You're the sponsor." "I own the land," he said. "The trust uses it." Lena took the mug, fingers brushing his. The contact lingered a fraction too long. Both noticed. "I was supposed to meet you tomorrow," she said. "At the lodge." The storm had other plans. She hesitated, then nodded. "I'm here for the breeding program, high-altitude predators. Genetic sustainability." Eli watched her as she spoke. The way her hands moved, precise, confident. This wasn't a woman chasing a paycheck. This was someone who believed in what she did. "Truck lost contact," she added. "I thought I could walk back." "You can't," he said, not unkindly, just true. They rode to the main lodge mid-morning. The place rose from the trees like something older than money. Stone, timber, quiet, authority. Inside, staff moved with practiced efficiency. Heads nodded when Eli passed. Respect, not fear. Lena felt it. The weight of his presence. The way the room seemed to bend around him. Her quarters overlooked the lower valley. Spacious, warm. Too much for someone used to a city apartment and borrowed lab space. That evening, Eli's advisor, Grant Holloway, waited in the study. Papers spread across the desk. Contracts. Agreements. "The Whitmore family wants confirmation," Grant said carefully. "They're tired of delays." Eli looked out at the mountains as the sun bled into them. "I told you. I'll sign when the project stabilizes." Grant sighed. "Eli, the accident was 8 years ago. And you've let that diagnosis decide your whole life." Eli's jaw tightened. "We're done." Quote. Grant left, uneasy. Later, as night settled in, Lena walked the lodge grounds, breathing in pine and cold stone. She felt watched, not in fear, in awareness. Eli stood near the stables, horse calm beside him. In lantern light, his face was carved from shadow and fire. "You shouldn't wander alone," he said. "I grew up in these mountains," she replied, "just lower ones." They shared a quiet smile. For a moment, neither spoke. The distance between them felt charged, fragile. Then Lena broke it. "Thank you for yesterday." Eli nodded. "Get some rest." As she turned away, he watched her go, a heaviness settling in his chest he hadn't felt in years. The mountain had given him solitude, but now it had brought him something else. And he didn't yet know the cost. The next morning settled over the lodge like a held breath. Lena woke before dawn, the unfamiliar quiet pressing against her ears. No traffic, no sirens. Just wind brushing the pines and the distant creak of timber as the building warmed. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned in pieces. Snow. Hooves. A man with steady hands and eyes that missed nothing. She dressed quickly and stepped onto the balcony. Frost glazed the rail. Below, the valley stretched wide and untouched, as if the world had been reset overnight. It made her feel small. And strangely hopeful. Her first day at the Conservation Center passed in focused blur. The facility was state-of-the-art, tucked into the mountains with careful respect for the land. Clean labs, modern equipment, thoughtful design. Someone had poured real money into this place, and real care. By late afternoon, she forgot to be nervous, until Eli appeared in the doorway. He didn't interrupt, just leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching her work. She felt him before she saw him. A shift in the room. Her concentration faltered. "You don't hover over scientists," she said without looking up. A pause, then a low chuckle. "Not usually." She turned then, pushing her glasses up. "Everything okay?" Grant wanted a progress update. Lena gestured to the data screens. "We're ahead of schedule. The mountain lion samples show more genetic variation than expected. That's good news." Eli stepped closer, studying the graphs with quiet intensity. "You talk about it like it matters." "It does," she said simply. He nodded once. Something in his expression softened. They walked the grounds together after sunset. No guards, no staff, just crunching snow under boots and the sound of horses shifting in the stables. Lena noticed how Eli changed around the animals. His shoulders eased, his voice gentled. I used to ride every day, he said suddenly. Used to? He reached out, resting a hand on the stall door. The horse leaned into the touch. Before the fall. She waited, didn't press. It was a climbing accident, he added. 8 years ago. That's when you... She stopped herself. He didn't flinch. Yes. The word hung there, heavy, final. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Eli shrugged, but the motion lacked its usual certainty. I built everything else around it. The land, the trust, work that lasts longer than blood. Lena studied his face in the lantern light. The control, the restraint, the old ache he carried like a private wound. That kind of loss changes how you choose, she said. He looked at her sharply. It changes whether you choose at all. The silence that followed was thick, charged. That night, dinner was set outdoors beneath heaters and soft lantern glow. Simple food, rich flavors. The mountains loomed dark and watchful beyond the light. You could have built this anywhere, Lena said. Why here? Eli considered. Because this place doesn't pretend. It takes what it wants, leaves the rest. She met his gaze. People aren't mountains. No, he agreed. They're worse. Something almost like a smile touched his mouth. Days passed. A rhythm formed. Work in the mornings, walks in the afternoons. Long conversations that wandered from science to childhood memories to things neither of them named outright. Lena learned Eli had grown up here. Learned the land before he learned people. Learned responsibility young. Eli learned Lena never backed down from a problem, that she listened more than she spoke, that she laughed when startled, and cursed softly in Spanish when frustrated. One evening, an elk broke loose near the equipment yard. Chaos followed. Lena chased after it, shouting useless instructions, nearly slipping in the mud. Eli laughed, a deep, unguarded sound that surprised them both. They worked side by side to recover her scattered gear. Mud-streaked. Breathless. Close. Later, in Eli's private workshop, she cleaned lenses while he repaired a damaged case. Their shoulders brushed, hands collided once, then stilled. There's something you should know, Eli said without looking up. She felt it coming. The weight in his voice. I was told I couldn't have children, he continued. Not maybe, not unlikely, impossible. Lena froze. For a man like me, he went on, that meant something. Or so I was told it did. She set the lens down carefully. Eli, I don't want sympathy, he said. I just need you to understand why some things are off limits. She turned fully to him then, saw the rawness beneath the control, the old shame. You're more than a diagnosis, she said firmly. Legacy isn't just blood, it's impact. He studied her face, searching for something. Belief, pity. She offered neither, only truth. Their hands met without planning it, fingers curling, warm, real. The door burst open. Mr. Mercer, a ranch hand said, breathless. Miss Whitmore has arrived. Eli's hand dropped instantly. His face shuddered. Lena felt the words land like a blow. Whitmore, the name echoed, the weight of it. The unspoken. Thank you, Eli said coolly. I'll meet her shortly. The door closed. Silence returned, but it was different now, sharp, unforgiving. I should get back to my quarters, Lena said, already stepping away. Lena, wait! She stopped, but didn't turn. You don't owe me explanations. That's not. You're my employer, she cut in, voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. Nothing more. She left before he could answer. From the balcony later, Lena watched a sleek SUV pull into the lodge drive. A woman stepped out, perfectly dressed, posture sharp with ownership. She laughed too loudly, touched Eli's arm as if it belonged to her. Lena closed the curtains. Somewhere deep inside, a warning stirred. The mountain was not done testing them yet. The lodge changed with her arrival. Lena felt it before she saw it. The air grew tighter. Voices softened in hallways. Staff moved with careful smiles that didn't reach their eyes. By the second morning, the name Whitmore carried weight like a storm cloud. Vivian Whitmore was impossible to ignore. She walked through the lodge as if it had been waiting for her. Tall, polished, hair perfect even in mountain cold. Her laughter rang too bright, too sharp, echoing off stone walls. Jewelry flashed when she moved, catching light meant for quieter things. Lena first encountered her in the lower gardens. Vivian stood with 2 assistants, inspecting winter arrangements with a look of mild disgust. "I said evergreens," she snapped, "not whatever this wild mess is." Lena paused, considering whether to retreat. She didn't. "Wild is kind of the point," Lena said evenly. Vivian turned. Her gaze traveled slowly, deliberately, from Lena's boots to her face. A smile curved her lips, cold, measuring. "And you must be the scientist," she said. "From the city." "Dr. Hart," Lena replied, "yes." "How charming," Vivian said, "playing with animals out here." Lena felt the insult land. She kept her voice calm. "We work to protect ecosystems. It's not a game." Vivian's smile thinned. "Of course." Eli appeared then, as if drawn by tension alone. He positioned himself subtly closer to Lena, not touching, but present. "Vivian," he said, voice cool. "I thought you were meeting Grant." "I was," Vivian replied sweetly, looping her arm through his, "but I wanted to see the grounds." Her eyes flicked to Lena. Sharp, assessing. "This is Dr. Hart," Eli said. "She's leading the conservation program." Vivian laughed softly. "I'm sure she's very capable." Eli didn't smile. Lena excused herself. Her pulse didn't slow until she reached the lab. That night, Eli found her there, well past midnight. Lights low. Screens glowing. She didn't look up when he entered. "You're avoiding me," he said. "I'm working." "You skipped dinner." She finally turned. "Your guest didn't make it easy." He exhaled slowly. "Vivian and I have an arrangement." "An arrangement," Lena repeated. "It was decided years ago," he said. "Business, alliances." "And feelings?" Eli's jaw tightened. "Not part of the contract." Lena looked back at her screen. "Then we're clear." He stepped closer. "Are we?" She stood. The space between them narrowed, dangerous. "You don't get to ask that," she said quietly. "Not while she's here." Silence stretched, heavy. "I never planned to meet you like this," he said. "I never planned to care," she replied. They stood there, neither moving, neither yielding. Then Lena noticed something on her monitor. A pattern, a detail she'd dismissed before. Her breath caught. "Eli," she said slowly, "can I ask you something?" He nodded. "When you were diagnosed," she continued, "do you know what tests they ran?" He frowned. "Basic ones. It was after the accident. Everything happened fast." "Did they ever repeat them?" Quote, "No." Quote, Lena's heart began to pound. Possibility flickered. Dangerous. Hopeful. "I need more data," she said, mostly to herself. Eli studied her. "You're thinking something." "I'm thinking it's complicated," she said carefully. "And I don't want to say anything I can't prove." Before he could respond, the lab door opened. "Mr. Mercer," a staff member said. "Miss Whitmore's asking for you." Eli's shoulders stiffened. "I'll be there." The moment broke. The days that followed were unbearable. Vivian hovered. Appeared whenever Lena and Eli spoke. Comments wrapped in silk and poison. Decisions made without consultation. Staff reassigned. Decorations changed. It was a quiet takeover. Lena buried herself in work. Longer hours. Fewer meals. She avoided common spaces. Avoided Eli. But the lodge felt smaller each day. One morning, she arrived at the lab and stopped cold. Drawers open, equipment scattered, samples gone, her laptop missing. Her breath came fast. She checked backups. Some files were gone, not all, but the important ones, including her private correspondence with the outside lab. Fear slid cold down her spine. She ran to Grant's office. He listened, face darkening. "We'll report this," he said, immediately. They didn't get the chance. Security arrived first. "Dr. Hart," the chief said carefully. "There's been an accusation." "What kind?" "A necklace belonging to Ms. Whitmore was found in your quarters." Lena stared at him. "That's impossible. I'm afraid we need you to come with us." The lodge hall was filled with people. Staff, officials. Vivian sat near the fire, dabbing at dry eyes. Eli entered moments later, his face drained of color as he took in the scene. "Eli," Lena said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I didn't do this." Evidence was laid out, the necklace, security footage, circumstantial, damning. Vivian spoke softly about trust and disappointment. Lena didn't look at her. She looked at Eli. He stood frozen between duty and instinct, between truth and pressure. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "Dr. Hart will be escorted to the city. Her contract is terminated." The words hit like a physical blow. Lena didn't cry. She nodded once. As guards led her away, she met Eli's eyes one last time. There was agony there. Regret. But it was too late. She left the mountains behind with more than her heart broken. She left with the truth still locked inside her. And Eli Mercer watched the snow fall, knowing he had just made the worst mistake of his life. The helicopter vanished into the clouds, leaving the mountains unnaturally quiet. Eli stood alone on the landing pad long after the wind settled. His hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles ached. He told himself he'd done the right thing, that the evidence had been clear, that leadership demanded distance, the lie tasted bitter. That night he didn't attend dinner, or the meeting with the elders. He shut himself inside his quarters and stared out at the dark valley, replaying Lena's face as she was led away. No tears, just disbelief, and something worse, disappointment. Grant Holloway watched the lodge sink into uneasy stillness. He'd served the Mercer family for 40 years. He knew when a decision rotted from the inside. This one did. He began asking questions, quiet ones. He spoke to staff who had worked the West Wing the night before the incident, checked access logs more carefully, looked twice at footage others glanced at once. A young housekeeper finally broke. Her hands shook as she spoke. "I saw Ms. Whitmore leaving Dr. Hart's quarters," she whispered. "Late, carrying something under her shawl. She told me I'd lose my job if I said anything." Grant felt cold settle in his bones. By morning he had more. Patterns, old rumors. A history Vivian Whitmore had buried well. Broken engagements, convenient scandals, women quietly removed. The final piece came from a discreet call to a private physician. Grant listened in silence, then closed his eyes. It was worse than betrayal. It was calculated cruelty. He went to Eli, broke protocol, broke doors if necessary. Eli was sitting on the floor beside an empty bottle, back against the bed. Unshaven, hollow-eyed. "Get up," Grant said sharply. Eli didn't move. "It doesn't matter." "It does," Grant snapped, "because you were wrong." That got his attention. Grant laid everything out. The planted necklace. The lab sabotage. Vivian's threats. Her plan to pass off another man's child as Eli's heir. Rage burned through Eli like fire through dry brush. He was on his feet in seconds. "How long since she left?" he demanded. 5 days, Grant said. "There's a flight to Denver tonight." Eli didn't hesitate. The helicopter roared back to life within minutes. Lena sat in the airport terminal, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on a page she hadn't turned in 10 minutes. 5 days since the mountains had spit her out. 5 days of silence, of doubt creeping in where certainty once lived. She'd told herself she was done hoping. The air changed. People looked up, conversations faded. A ripple passed through the terminal. She looked up too. Eli stood there, breathing hard, hair wind-tossed, eyes locked on hers like he'd crossed oceans to find her. He walked straight toward her and dropped to one knee on the cold tile. Gasps echoed. "Eli," she whispered, What are you doing? Everything I should have done sooner, he said clearly. Lena Hart, you were framed. I know everything, and I am so deeply sorry. Her breath caught. Tears spilled before she could stop them. You sent me away, she said. You chose fear over truth. I did, he said, and I will carry that shame forever. But I'm here now, asking for the chance to do better. Security approached, confused. Eli didn't move. I love you, he said, loud enough for anyone listening. And I will not lose you again. Silence held. Lena closed her eyes. Then she laughed through tears. You're a stubborn man. Yes, he agreed. And I'm asking you to forgive me anyway. She held his face in her hands. Stand up, she said softly. Before they arrest you. He stood, pulling her into his arms like he'd been afraid she might disappear. Later, in a quiet room away from eyes and cameras, Lena finally told him the truth she'd carried. The test results came back before everything fell apart, she said. Eli, you're not sterile. The world tilted. He sank into a chair, hands over his face. A sound escaped him that was half laugh, half sob. I can have children? He whispered. Yes. He pulled her close, holding on like a man reborn. They returned to the mountains together. The council met in emergency session. Voices clashed. Old rules faced new truths. Evidence was presented. Vivian Whitmore's mask shattered under the weight of proof. When the vote was called, the result was clear. The contract was dissolved. Eli walked out free. Weeks passed. Healing followed, slowly, carefully. Work resumed. Laughter returned to the lodge. Lena's lab thrived with full support. Eli wrote again, reclaiming pieces of himself thought lost. One night beneath a sky heavy with stars, Eli knelt in the snow once more. This time with a ring. Will you marry me? He asked simply. Yes, Lena said without hesitation. The wedding came with spring, mountains green and open. Promises spoken without fear. Months later, Lena stood in the same lab where it had all begun, staring at a test in her trembling hands. Positive. That night, she took Eli back to the ridge where he'd proposed. We're having a baby, she said. He laughed, cried, held her like the world had finally made sense. 3 months later, a doctor smiled and shook her head. Twins, she said. Eli laughed again, louder this time. The mountain man, who thought his line would end, stood on the edge of a future fuller than he'd ever dared imagine. And the storm that once nearly killed them both had led them home. Joy did not arrive quietly. It came with planning meetings, cautious smiles from elders, and long evenings where Eli and Lena lay awake, hands linked, staring at the ceiling as if the future might reveal itself there. Love had won. But winning came with weight. The mountains watched, unmoved. Lena's pregnancy shifted the rhythm of the lodge. Staff moved softer around her. Meals arrived unasked. Eli hovered, pretending not to. He read everything he could find, stacks of books piled beside his bed like legal briefs. You're staring, Lena said one morning, catching him mid-watch. I'm memorizing, he replied, in case I need to remember this exact moment forever. She laughed, then frowned. You can't control everything? He kissed her knuckles. I know. I'm trying to learn. The council's decision still echoed across the region. Some supported Eli openly, others did not. Old alliances had frayed, new ones were fragile. Grant handled the politics with careful hands. Eli focused on what he could touch. The land. The animals. Lena. The first complication came quietly. Lena noticed the fatigue before the pain, a heaviness that settled into her bones. Tests followed. Then, more tests. The doctor spoke gently, but the words landed hard. Twin pregnancies at altitude carry risks, she said. We need to monitor you closely. Eli's jaw tightened. We can move her. Lena shook her head. This is my work, my home now. They compromised, Specialists flew in weekly, equipment was upgraded, the lodge adjusted around her growing needs. Still, fear crept in at night. Eli would wake to find Lena staring out the window, hand resting on her belly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked once. "That first storm," she said. "How close everything came to ending before it began." He pulled her close. It didn't end, it changed. The twins made themselves known early. Strong, insistent, kicking like they were already fighting for space in the world. Lena marveled at the contrast. 2 heartbeats where once there had been none, according to old diagnoses. Science explained it. Love made it sacred. The elders came around slowly, one by one. Curiosity softened into acceptance. When the oldest among them brought a hand-carved cradle, Eli bowed his head in gratitude. "Tradition survives when it grows," the elder said. Winter returned before the babies were due. Snow closed the high passes. The lodge became an island of light and warmth in a white world. The night Lena went into early labor, the wind howled like it had the day they met. Eli felt the echo of that fear in his chest as alarms sounded, and doctors moved fast. Lena's face was pale but calm. "Look at me," she said, gripping his hand. "We've come too far to doubt now." Hours stretched. Time lost meaning. At dawn, the doctor emerged, exhaustion lining her face but relief clear in her eyes. "They're stable," she said. "Both of them." "So is Lena." Eli sagged against the wall, breath leaving him in a rush. Gratitude hit hard and sudden. He was allowed in later. The room was quiet. Machines hummed softly. Lena lay propped against pillows, tired but smiling. "They're stubborn," she whispered. "Just like you." He laughed softly and bent to kiss her forehead. "Thank God." The twins were small, wrapped tight, perfect. One had his eyes, the other her steady gaze. He cried then, unashamed. The mountain man who had learned to live without hope now held 2 living proofs that the past could be wrong. Recovery took time. Lena stayed near the medical wing, watched over with care. Eli refused to leave her side, sleeping in a chair more often than his bed. News spread, not as scandal this time, as miracle. Visitors came, gifts, blessings, promises of loyalty renewed. But the greatest test came quietly. One afternoon, Lena found Eli alone in the nursery, staring at the cradles. "You're thinking again," she said. "I keep waiting for something to be taken away," he admitted. "Like before." She crossed the room and rested her head against his chest. "Then let's choose trust." "Every day." He nodded, wrapping his arms around all 3 of them. Outside, the snow began to melt. Water ran down the mountainsides, feeding valleys below. Life moving forward. The twins slept, unaware of the legacy waiting for them. And Eli Mercer, once certain his line would end, stood at the edge of a future so full it almost scared him. Not because he feared loss, but because he finally believed he was worthy of what he'd been given. Spring came slowly to the sawtooths. Snow loosened its grip in thin silver streams that ran down rock faces and into the valleys. Pines breathed again. The land shifted, quiet, but alive, as if it knew something precious had survived the winter. So had they. Lena walked the lodge grounds with the twins nestled against her chest, 1 heartbeat on each side. The air smelled of damp earth and pine sap. Every step felt deliberate now. Grounded, she had never felt more present in her own body. Eli watched from the porch, leaning on the rail, coffee forgotten in his hand. The sight still struck him with the force of something unreal. The woman who had arrived half frozen and defiant. The children he had once believed impossible. His children. The council reconvened that week, not in crisis, but in acknowledgement. Agreements were renewed. Old tensions eased. The Morrisons were gone from the region, their influence dissolved by their own deceit. The land felt cleaner for it. When Eli entered the chamber this time, Lena was beside him. No whispers followed, only nods. Leadership, Eli learned, did not come from fear of loss. It came from standing in truth and letting others rise with you. The twins were named in a small ceremony near the river bend. Jonah, quiet and watchful, with Eli's amber eyes. Mara, fierce and alert, with Lena's steady gaze. Grant stood close, his expression unreadable until Eli handed him Jonah for a moment. The old advisor's hands trembled. "I never thought I'd see this day," Grant said softly. "Neither did I," Eli replied. "Thank you for not letting me lose it." Grant nodded. "You just needed reminding who you were." Life did not slow down. It deepened. Lena returned to her work gradually, the lab once again alive, with motion and purpose. Her research expanded, now backed by resources that allowed real change. She trained young scientists from rural communities, insisting knowledge belonged to everyone willing to protect the land. Eli rode again, not to outrun the past, but to greet the morning. Sometimes he took Jonah with him, strapped close, the horse's steady gait rocking them both. Other times, Mara stayed behind with Lena, fists clenched in fierce sleep, as if already refusing to be left out. Evenings belonged to the four of them. Firelight, quiet meals, stories told slowly, without hurry. One night, Lena found Eli standing outside, staring at the stars. "You're doing it again," she said gently. "Counting," he replied. "Stars?" "Miracles." She slipped her hand into his. "You don't have to earn this." "I know," he said, "but I'll spend my life honoring it." Quote, "The lodge staff watched the changes with fond amusement. The once untouchable mountain man now knelt on floors, coaxing laughter from infants. The landowner who had ruled with silence now listened first. Love had softened him, not weakened, sharpened. Years later, when the twins learned to walk, then to ride, then to run ahead on mountain trails, Eli told them the story. Not the version of contracts and councils, but the one that began with a storm. "How did you meet Mama?" Mara asked one night, chin on her hands. Eli smiled at Lena across the table. "She tried to challenge the mountain alone." "And you saved her?" Jonah asked. Lena laughed. "He thinks he did." "What really happened?" Mara pressed. Eli considered. "We saved each other." The mountain, ancient and patient, bore witness. There were hard days, arguments, fear when storms returned, moments when the weight of responsibility pressed too hard. But they faced it together, always together. On the 10th anniversary of the blizzard, Eli took Lena back to the ridge where it had all begun. The twins raced ahead, laughter echoing through the peaks. "I used to think the mountain took from me," Eli said quietly. "My future, my name." "And now?" Lena asked. "And now I know it was only clearing space. For love, for truth, for life." They stood there as the sun dipped low, painting the land gold and shadow, the children's voices carrying on the wind. A sterile mountain man no longer. A father, a husband, a keeper of legacies far richer than blood alone. And beside him, the woman who had walked out of a storm and into his life, changing everything. Some stories are born in silence, others in fire. The best ones begin when hope seems impossible, and they never truly end. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.